You know that feeling, that real desire to know who you are deep down, to feel solid inside?
Mm-hmm.
Especially now, with just so much information flying around, finding that sense of well-being, it feels harder sometimes.
It really can. So much noise.
Exactly. So today, we're trying to cut through some of that. We're focusing on this really powerful idea, becoming your own home.
Yeah, becoming your own home. We're diving deep into what that actually means, building that, internal safety, that feeling of belonging to yourself.
Okay.
And the source material we're drawing on for this exploration, it's all about healing, growth, and what it calls radical self-love.
Radical self-love. Interesting.
Yeah. So think of this deep dive as maybe a shortcut, a way to grasp these big ideas on a more profound level, perhaps, without getting totally swamped by everything.
Got it. Okay. Becoming your own home. Let's really get into that. First up is self-love, right? But like you said, maybe not the surface level stuff.
Exactly. Not just the face masks and spa days, though those can be nice.
Sure.
But what our source highlights, which I think is really insightful, is how it connects real self-love directly to setting boundaries.
Boundaries.
It sort of reframes it, doesn't it? From something you just do for yourself, like a treat, to something you actively establish to protect your own energy and well-being.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's less about the quick fix and more about, say, having the guts to tell the truth, even when it's hard.
Yes, or prioritizing what you need, even if, someone else might feel a bit put out for a moment.
Right. That can be uncomfortable.
Totally. And the source gives concrete examples like saying no, without that long list of excuses we sometimes feel we need.
Oh, yeah. The endless justification.
Or saying a genuine yes, only to things that really light you up, even ending conversations that are just going nowhere productive.
Okay.
These things, they might feel small or even difficult, but they're actually powerful acts of self-love, according to this perspective.
And it's not just external, right? It sounds like it applies inwardly, too.
Absolutely. It's about being willing to have those tough, honest talks with yourself. Looking at the parts you maybe try to hide or ignore.
Mm-hmm.
And importantly, forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for mistakes or just for not knowing better back then. We all have those moments.
That's huge. Self-forgiveness.
It really is. And it pushes against that common societal message, doesn't it? The one that says you have to earn love, usually by compromising yourself constantly.
Like putting everyone else first all the time.
Yeah. But this view says, no, actually choosing yourself day in and day out, unapologetically, that is the act of self-love. It's about knowing you're worthy just as you are.
It really makes you pause and think, okay, what does choosing myself actually look like for me in my own life day to day?
That's the question, isn't it?
So we've got self-love deeply tied to boundaries. But what happens next when you start doing this, setting those boundaries, turning inward? That seems to lead us straight into healing, right?
It does. It's
Yeah.
a natural progression. And when we talk about healing based on this source, it's crucial to understand it's not always neat and tidy.
Oh, pretty.
Definitely not always pretty. The source really leans into the messy reality of it. Powerful, yes, but often messy. It acknowledges that healing can bring up a whirlwind of, intense and unexpected feelings.
Yeah, I can imagine. The source mentions things like old hurts resurfacing, grieving past versions of yourself, maybe.
Exactly. And confronting those patterns, those ways of behaving you might have learned or inherited that just don't serve you anymore. It can be quite a journey, emotionally speaking.
Confronting inherited patterns. Wow.
And what's really validating, I think, is that the source talks about that difficult realization that sometimes the people you most want love or support from, they might just be incapable of giving it in the way you need.
Oof, that's tough.
It is. And that's where self-compassion becomes so incredibly vital. You have to learn to give that kindness to yourself, especially when it's not coming from elsewhere.
It's good to hear, too, that bad days are normal in healing. Feeling stuck, like you're not getting anywhere. That's part of it.
Completely part of it. It's not a straight lineup. There's no fixed schedule, no deadline you're supposed to meet. Forgetting that adds so much pressure.
Right. No timeline.
No timeline. It's more about slowly stopping the ways you might abandon yourself, turning inward more often for answers, trusting yourself. The source calls it a silent revolution.
A silent revolution. I like that. Very personal.
Deeply personal. A quiet, internal transformation.
Okay, so you've got boundaries rooted in self-love. You're navigating this messy, powerful healing process. What starts to happen then? That brings us to growth, but the source suggests growth can feel kind of lonely.
Yeah, that's a really key insight here. Because real, meaningful growth often means making choices that at least initially, might separate you a bit from your old ways or even old relationships.
How so? Like choosing quiet time instead of constant socializing.
Exactly. Maybe choosing solitude because the old dynamics just don't fit anymore. Prioritizing your own peace over, drama or just filling the silence.
Okay.
The source also mentions things like setting up routines that support you, becoming really aware of your own internal red flags, those gut feelings that tell you something's off.
Getting better at listening to your intuition.
Precisely. It's a very inward-focused phase, often.
And it sounds like the growth itself happens in these small steps, not necessarily huge leaps.
Very much so. It's the consistent effort, waking up a bit earlier for yourself, choosing to read that book instead of scrolling, holding firm on a boundary you set. Tiny things, day after day.
Things that maybe no one else even notices.
That's the point the source makes, this kind of internal growth. It often doesn't get applause or external validation. You might not get pats on the back for making a difficult, honest choice or for, say, going to therapy.
Feels a bit thankless sometimes, maybe.
It can feel that way in the moment.
Yeah.
But the perspective offered is really quite hopeful. It's this idea that your future self is actually cheering you on.
Ah, I like that.
That future you deeply appreciates these small, consistent efforts. And the reassurance is that eventually, as you keep growing this way, you will start connecting with people who get it, people who share those deeper values.
So the loneliness isn't permanent?
Not necessarily, no. It's often a phase before finding a different kind of connection.
Okay, that makes sense.
Huh.
So bringing this all together, self-love, healing, growth, what's the main takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the core message is incredibly encouraging, actually. It's almost like the source is saying directly to you, the listener, you're doing better than you think. It really challenges that inner critic, that feeling of being behind or not good enough. It stresses that this is all a process. You're not stuck, you're becoming.
Right. Not broken, but becoming. I like that. It shows how linked these things are. Self-love is the engine, maybe. Healing is the journey. And growth is the proof you're moving.
That's a great way to put it. The engine, the journey, the proof.
Yeah.
And running through all of it is this thread of self-compassion. Just acknowledging your effort, especially when it feels hard.
Yeah. Being kind to yourself through it all.
Absolutely. So it circles back beautifully to that central idea. You are your own home.
Build it beautifully, one moment at a time. It feels very grounding. And that final thought from the source, you're worthy just because you exist, full stop.
Such a fundamental truth. Simple, but so powerful to remember.
Definitely.
So perhaps the thought to leave with today is this. How can you, right now, today, actively participate in building your own home? Based on what we've talked about, self-love as boundaries, the reality of healing, the nature of growth, what's one small intentional thing you could do?